Thank you. If you could move to the next slide, Allie, we'll talk a little bit about what we'll be discussing today. I'm Dr. Mary Pinon. I'm the academic coordinator for the MS in psychology and MS and PhD in developmental psychology. And my colleague is Dr. Sreeroopa Sarkar. If you want to introduce yourself really quickly. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mary. Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Sreeroopa Sarkar. I am the program director for the Masters in Psychology program, as well as MS and PhD in Developmental Psychology program.
All right, and today we'll be talking a little bit about living in the digital world and how we have, immersed ourselves in digital technology. We'll talk a little bit about the impact of that in our daily lives, how it affects us personally and socially, then talk a little bit about data analytics and career options, and as we go through this discussion, we'll talk a little bit about how there are connections between the topics that we're discussing and research that can be done in the field of psychology related to these topics, as well as potential careers that are available here. So next slide, please. So I'll jump right in and talk about the impact of it on our daily lives, basically giving you a little background, looking at the benefits of digital technology. Technology is everywhere. We live in a technologically saturated world. Just to give you a little historical background, in 1984, only 8.2% of households in the United States had a computer, and the World Wide Web hadn't even been invented yet. Jump to 2000, and 51% of households, that's 54 million households in the United States, had one or more computers. Pew Research now estimates that there are 5 billion people around the world who own a mobile device, and around 96% of people in the United States own a cell phone. So that's a huge growth in the past few decades. So basically, we rely on technology for everything, for work, entertainment, shopping, education, networking. And understanding how people use technology, why they use it, and what the outcomes are, opens the door to a wide field of careers. When it comes to information access, digital technology gives us access to information, and that includes the kinds of things that how we use it and when we use it. So according to Statista, and this is done, I think in February of this year, among US internet users, the most popular digital activity is email. Everybody's using email. However, not everything that we see online is reliable or accurate. So even though there's all this information, how do we know that we can rely on it? Is that ad that you saw about losing weight on a ginger diet, is that real? Is Wikipedia a scholarly source? With all this access, it's really a challenge. It becomes even more challenging to remain a critical consumer. As far as social networking, digital technology helps us keep up with family members, friends, colleagues, and it also allows us to connect with the activities of people we haven't even met face-to-face. I'm thinking about like celebrities or leaders of various industries. And a media psychologist, from that point of view, a media psychologist might ask, well, are these connections that we have online, are they equal to the ones that we have face-to-face or in real life? That's an area that clearly opens up researchers to a number of different studies. Now, as far as the positive impact on human development, we have become so immersed in technology and it has become so user-friendly that we hardly even notice it. We just reach for our phones when we want to know what time it is. People don't wear watches anymore, unless you want to use a watch to help you track your steps or your heart rate. So we're using devices in lots of different ways, in ways that we never thought we could before. And it's reached the point where you don't have to be an engineer or a computer expert to be able to use digital technology. However, when it comes to technological literacy, when it comes to actually knowing what that is to be a literate user of technology, that means you not only know how to use the technology, but you can also understand its nature, the power of it, and the consequences of using it. So in psychology, we study what some of those consequences are. And a little later in this discussion, Dr. Sarkar will talk more about some of the careers in organizations that make use of the vast amounts of information that are generated through digital technology. The fact that you are all attending this virtual symposium shows that you have a degree of technological literacy, and you're also making use of distance learning opportunities. Distance learning can be formal, like an online classroom, or it can be more informal, such as webinars or online instructional materials, or even YouTube videos. I recently learned how to repair a 3D printer that I bought online at Craigslist that was broken, and I didn't know about it. So I learned how to repair it myself. That's what you can. That's the kind of information that you can gain from just being a careful consumer of online information. So what does that mean as far as providing developmental support? Here's all of this information, all this technology. There are so many sources online that can help parents, teachers, clinicians, professionals, even individuals who are looking for support in their personal or professional development. So there are resources that you can find online to optimize personal, professional growth. You can find information about health issues and how to optimize development in your child, or how to know when there might be a problem that you should go to a doctor about. There's so much information there, but the thing you need to think about is, with all that information, how do you filter out the misinformation and the misleading information from what is factual and what is helpful? Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about misuse of technology. I mean, you're all pretty much familiar with some of those common misuses. When it comes to misinformation and stereotypes, there's a lot of misleading information online. And our natural cognitive biases, for example, confirmation bias, which has you seeking out information that supports your existing beliefs, or in-group bias, where you believe someone from within your social group rather than someone who's an outsider. Those forms of cognitive bias, we have those naturally, but they can work against us in that they can help perpetuate stereotypes that we are exposed to. So there are a lot of different ways that psychology can help us understand how we develop stereotypes and how to avoid those stereotypes. The behavioral impact is, how do you respond to the information that you receive? Misuse or overuse of digital technology can contribute to an over-reliance on digital devices. For example, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 5th edition, DSM-5, identifies internet gaming disorder as a disorder. So there are ways that you can become addicted to various digital devices. On the other extreme, you may be using devices to the extent that it displaces other activities in your life, such as studying, face-to-face socializing, and what's common among adolescents is they give up sleep to stay on social media. So it can affect your daily life if you let it get away from you. The topics when it comes to misuse or social issues really focuses primarily on cyber victimization. That's what everybody talks about. That's what you hear in the news. It's something that receives a lot of attention. And with the pandemic, we also saw an increase in online frauds, scams, security breaches. There were a lot of intrusions, cyber intrusions going on because there were so many of us online. Now, when it comes to types of cyber victimization, cyberbullying in particular can be devastating, and it can be worse if it can be equal to, if not worse than, the impact of face-to-face bullying. I'm sure you've all seen reports about teenagers who were cyberbullied to the point of committing suicide. The research is still out looking at determining whether cyberbullying has led to some of the school shootings that we've been hearing about. The research hasn't quite supported that, but yeah, there's still an open field there for psychologists to continue research. Another type of cyber victimization involves phishing or online scams. This is where individuals are tricked out of their money, or they're fooled into believing someone is other than they claim to be. Phishing scams in particular target older adults and vulnerable individuals. So having said that, having talked about some of these issues and the misuse of technology, there's a clear need to have experts who can apply their knowledge of psychology to help address cyber victimization. There's a lot, it's an open field, and there are so many factors and threads that need to be examined to help understand what may lead to cyber victimization, what may drive a perpetrator to engage in that type of activity, and how we can help prevent all of that, or at least draw attention to it to the point where people are more cognizant of it and are more able to reach out and respond to individuals who need assistance. Okay, next slide, please. So let's move into a specific type of digital technology, and that's social media. We were all familiar with social media. It is our platform for connection. It helps us connect with the wider world, find more personal connections, generate positive social change, and it helps you grow your knowledge and your skills for your personal growth as well as for your career. As of last month, as of April, there were 5 billion internet users worldwide. That's 63% of the global population. And of that group, 4.65 billion of these are active social media users. That's a huge amount, which means there is a lot of influence that can be had through social media. The most popular social media network is Facebook, with over 2.89 billion active users every month. And that is followed closely behind by YouTube. And then there's WhatsApp, Instagram, WeChat, and TikTok, surprisingly, even though it's very popular, only has 1 billion users on a monthly basis. So that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that can be influenced and that can influence others on these social media platforms. When it comes to dating and friendships, there are a lot of dating algorithms that rely on a psychological framework that generates a personality profile to help match individuals with one another. eHarmony, for example, is one that relies on psychology professionals to generate the criteria for these algorithms. And I believe eHarmony was actually developed by a psychologist. So there are a lot of inroads that can be made when it comes to careers, or at least consulting opportunities within this field. When it comes to positive social change, there are sources online for activism, for support, fighting disinformation, placing a spotlight on bias, injustice. There is a lot out there, and because Walden emphasizes positive social change, I know a number of students at Walden who've developed their own nonprofits that are designed to address what they see as a particular need. So we have a lot of activists within our own community at Walden, and it's great to see. With career development, today you can learn the skills and the knowledge you need for your career from online sources, totally online. Walden is one example. Today, landing a job requires knowledge of online sites and various social media. There was an industry study of online resumes that found that those resumes with a link to a robust LinkedIn profile had a 71% higher chance of getting a job interview than those who didn't have a LinkedIn profile. However, based on their research, as the level of the job increased, the impact of the LinkedIn profile decreased. So there's kind of a middle ground there. But it's interesting to note how research in that field, looking at big data, can help identify how you can leverage some of those online media and social media in particular to help you when it comes to career placement. So finally, next slide, please. Finally, I can't talk about the impact of digital technology without also mentioning the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic turned everybody's lives upside down. The pandemic caused the world to turn to digital media and technology to meet our needs, including telehealth, social networking, education, business, shopping, entertainment. I mean, work from home became the new normal. We're just now starting to get out from under that, and we're still looking at a lot of hybrid cases where there are some people who are still working from home, or who are working part of the week at home and part of the week in the office. So it's actually changed how we see employment and where we employ ourselves, or where we place ourselves during the workday. So the move to online connection and communication has pointed out, however, significant gaps in access. Because many of us were able to turn to digital technology pretty readily in light of the COVID pandemic, there were still a lot of disparities, what we call the digital divide. There were a lot of disparities in digital access for a number of people. And it became even more apparent during the pandemic. This was particularly true for lower socioeconomic families, older adults, those in rural areas who didn't have access to broadband internet, for example. So there were a lot of moves made to support the expansion of internet access, but still, you may not have a device to allow you to actually work with the internet. Try working in an online classroom with just a smartphone. You can do it, but it's a bit of a struggle. So the impact of lockdown and social distancing has significant implications for research and professionals. There are a lot of questions that still need to be answered because of the impact of COVID. There are children who are preschoolers who've spent most of their lives in lockdown. So how has this limited time with, how has this inability to interact with other toddlers and preschoolers, how does that affect their social skills? For adolescents, were relying on social media even more during COVID than before, just to maintain their connections with their peers. So has this reliance on social media been beneficial, or has it been harmful to them in the long run? When it comes to older individuals, are older adults able to make use of digital technology to maintain their connections with others? I know a lot of, older adults in particular were very vulnerable to the COVID-19 pandemic, to the virus itself. And so they were much more reluctant to go outdoors, to go shopping, for example. So were older adults able to use digital technology to make shopping orders online? Were they able to order food? So it's more than just the social connection, it's just daily living. Were they able to get what they needed using social media? Was it a struggle for them? So research on the pandemic is just now starting to get published. We're just starting to conduct research looking at the impact. But that doesn't mean we're stopping. I have one Walden student who's working on her dissertation right now, and she's contributing to the research literature on the global pandemic. She's studying how adolescents' use of social media has changed during COVID-19. And she's also trying to figure out whether that use has affected their subsequent mental health. Are they feeling more lonely? Is there an increase or decrease in depression or anxiety? The literature really doesn't point directly to what might be happening there. There's a clear gap in the literature, and she's working to address that gap. So as the research results are disseminated, psychology professionals in early childhood organizations, in schools, gerontology centers, and so on, organizations all across human development, they can take that information and implement it into programs to improve people's lives and to generate additional research to learn more about human behavior. So having said that, I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Sarkar, who can talk a little more about what we do with all of that data, how we gather all that information, how we disseminate it, and how we deal with it. Okay, you're on mute still.
Yes, hello everyone. Next slide, please. Hi everyone. I will start talking about the impact of digital technology on economy. As Dr. Pinon just mentioned, what do we do with all the data? So let's start with the digital technology's impact on the economic landscape. As we all know, our economy has been changing over the years with the advent of digital technology, how it changed the entire world as well as our economy. So think about the basic things that we do. Online shopping. Think about how we ordered groceries, we ordered everything, we ordered food, everything online. Amazon.com, they're doing great, and everything else is going online for shopping, right? Think about travel planning. How many of us call a travel agent anymore? We just go online. Think about when we are going to book online for Airbnb. We call a cab, Uber, Lyft, and all other agencies. So we use all the traveling things online. Think about, I'm sorry about my voice. Think about the online banking and the finances. Everything is being done online. We try to avoid going to the banks, right? We use all the consumer spending, mortgage, loans, everything is online right now. Our financial planning, our retirement planning, all online. Stock, trade, everything is online. So you can see how our entire economy is, it's pretty much impacted so much by digital technology. Next slide, please. So that means we have all this data, all these companies who are working with all these things online. They have huge amount of data, right? Yeah. Think about Facebook, Twitter, any social media company. So as Dr. Pinon mentioned, Facebook, you had like 2.6 billion users every month. So have huge amount of data. So That's what they call the big data, is the ever-growing and ever-changing data set. You can imagine 2.6 billion people interacting among themselves. So all the data that's coming in. And so it's ever-growing, ever-changing. So the social media, big businesses like Airbnb, Uber, everybody that's conducting businesses online, they have huge, huge, huge amount of what they call big data. And the airports, the jet services, how many planes are going out there, and how much information the airport's traffic signals are getting, or air controllers are getting. All these informations they need to process. So that's the data that inform the consumer behavior. So the data helps all these big businesses or organizations to track the consumer behavior. They help them make the decisions. I'll talk about it quickly. Next slide, please. So that's where the data analytics comes into place. So what happens? All those businesses, they have the data. What do they do with the data? So there comes the analysis of the data. So the data analytics is pretty much they summarize, they describe the data, and they predict the performance or the consumer's behavior attitude. So for example, Amazon sees a set of attitudes from the consumer. So they target the particular consumer behavior. And that's where the psychological aspects comes into the play. That's why Dr. Pinon was saying a lot of those social media companies and or online companies use psychologists to predict the consumer behavior, consumer attitude. So data analysis is the key to a company's performance and growth. So right now, so that's the digital analytics. That's a huge job market. And I believe that the psychology, it's not only my belief, is the employers actually, they're looking into employees who have that particular skills, data analytic skills, as well as some knowledge of psychology. So with a degree in digital psychology or digital marketing. So basically that's nothing but it's an interdisciplinary study that combines psychology, that predicts consumer behavior, attitude, actions, and the data analysis skills. So that's the field where the jobs are right now. And many employers always indicate that, the marketing firms, the public relations firm, social media firms, the big businesses who depend on websites for their businesses, they always mention that's where the jobs are, like individuals who has the knowledge of basic psychological theories, personality theories, as well as has some kinds of data analysis skills. They have huge potentials for finding jobs in social media, in those companies, particularly public relations companies, marketing companies, social media companies. So that's one of the areas that's also a very upcoming field for our the psychology students. I think that's what pretty much sums up the digital impact the impact of digital technology on economic landscapes. If you have any questions, the next slide, I think next slide focuses on questions and summary. In the final remarks, Dr. Pinon, would you like to add anything?
No, I think you summed it up really well. That there's just an open field when it comes to opportunities for psychology professionals in digital technology.
I think this is the end of our presentation. It's 3:45 p.m. Central Time. And thank you all for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.